Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. As you know, if you've been here with us before, we start right on time. It is 11:40. I'm Diane Michael with Beyond the Boardroom, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning with my CAM partner, Lindsay Lombardi with Coastal Living Association Management. If this is your first time with us, welcome. If you're returning back, thank you for being here and thank you for your patience as I get through our introduction. Our goal at Beyond the Boardroom is to educate board members and CAMs in an easy way at your desk, on your mobile, while you're traveling. We know how important education and CE credits are, and that's exactly why we decided to launch our Beyond the Boardroom program. We started on the fourth Wednesday of each month and have already grown to now offer education and CE credits on the second and the fourth Wednesdays. So please mark your calendars for the next webinar Wednesday happening on March 11th. Keep watching the emails and be sure to save us as safe senders so you don't miss important education updates. So listen up. If you're not getting a weekly email newsletter from me, it's either Digital Diane Mike, or Beyond the Boardroom, but you should be used to getting it by now. I've been sending it out pretty much weekly for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And it could possibly be in your spam. It could be in your junk. And if you'll go to those folders and add that email address to your safe sender white label list, you will not miss any of the important information because we are constantly looking out for you CAMs and for board members. And we're constantly getting questions of, are you going to be offering these classes? Are you going to be offering board certifications? And today we know our schedule for a month out. But tomorrow, a course that we didn't have today, we could have tomorrow. It just all depends on the vendors and then the DBPR, how they process the submissions. So it's important for you to be watching those email newsletters every week to make sure that you are getting the credits and the information that is most updated and good for what you need as a CAM and board member. Lindsay will go over some things in a minute, but I do want to say, CAMs, for your 15 hours that is required, do not wait until the last minute to get all of your credits, because we, as the hosts of Beyond the Boardroom, do not have control over how the DBPR processes the submissions that we send. And so, we just, by nature, some of us wait to the last minute to do things. Our free program is completely free because the vendors help to underwrite it, sponsor it. So it gives us the ability to offer these courses to you for free. And so, we want to be here to support you as much as possible. But if it comes down to like a month out that you need credits, and then all of a sudden you start taking these Webinar Wednesday classes to try to fill in all your credits, we can't guarantee the timing that the submission takes to get it processed through the DBPR. So just something to keep in mind. And again, just keep watching those emails, because today, for example, one of our earlier classes had the HR course that you need. And Kelly, who's going to be presenting after I just stop rambling, will be providing the IFM. And most of the time when we're providing these, we're providing ELE or OPP. And if you don't know all about those terms, then, you may be in the wrong place. But IFM is going to be today. And if you have CAMs that are in the office that need that IFM credit, Kelly will be presenting monthly with us. So if they can't make it today, we will welcome them back next month. Always let your fellow board members know. We feel like a more educated board member is a better support to you as a CAM. And if you let your other CAMs know, we appreciate that as well. Okay, I have put into the chat the remainder of the agenda. I'm going to do it again because we just found out that if you log on and then you come back, you lose everything that's up in the chat, which is good to know. And then I'm also going to open the chat while Lindsay talks, because we want to see where everyone is coming in from. We want to show Kelly. So show Kelly where you're logging in from in the chat now. We'd appreciate that while you listen to what Lindsay has to go over for submissions.
Okay, everyone that's been here all day, sorry, it's like you're playing me on repeat. But in order to get credit for today's course, it's very important that you follow the instructions that we give, because we are only allowed to provide credit to those that attend the course, and there's a few ways that we use in order to do that. So first, you used a link to register for the Zoom today. The link that we share at the end of this course is a different link. That link will be where you go on our website, in order to register to get credit for today's courses. If you attend all of the courses today, you will go and register at that link 4 times. So that link will bring you to our page and the section of our website where you will register. You will put in your first name, middle initial, and last name that is listed on your CAM license. Then you will put in your CAM license number, just the numbers. Then it will ask you for the course name and it will ask you for the code word. The course name is when and why you need to get a COI. That's the course that we're teaching right now. I'll abbreviate that for you to put into the thing, probably when and why. And then there will be a code word that I'll provide at the end of the course. The reason we require the code word is because we have to make sure that you didn't log on to your Zoom this morning at 9:30 and then walk away from your computer until we finished at 1:45 and didn't pay attention and got credit for 4 courses. We can't do that. So Kelly, FCA Insurance, they have a license with the DBPR to provide education, as well as the rest of our presenters. They work hard to get those. They pay to get those. They have to submit lots of paperwork to get those. And if they're found to be reporting that people are taking their courses when they're not, they will lose that privilege to provide these courses to you all. So we have to be careful for their sake that we are providing the information to the DBPR for people who attend the courses. So at the end of the course, we will provide a code word. That code word we'll provide a couple of times. We'll put it in the chat. Then after that, we're not giving that word out again. So if you're not here when the course ends, if you're on a phone call, I'm sorry. You pay attention to the chat, I guess, if you're on a phone call and you can't, listen. It will be in the chat, but you have to have that information for us to give you credit. I cannot provide it to you in an email later. You cannot ask me what it was because you were on the phone or stepped away from your desk. I just can't do it. So we're going to be really strict about that moving forward. We have to be. We have to protect our association allies who provide you all the free education. From time to time, may you miss out on a credit because you had to step away? You might, but we provide credits every month. And so if you attend all of our webinars, you're going to have more credits than you need at the end of the term for your renewal. So I'm sorry. I know that that stinks, but unfortunately, that is the law. That's what we have to do. That's the way we have to do this to provide the online education. It's just a fail safe for us to be able to say that we did everything in our power to make sure that you attended and paid attention. So please understand that. And I will stop talking now. We will provide all of that information at the end of the course.
No, thank you for going over that in depth. Okay, guys, meet your presenter for the next IFM credit, Kelly Whitaker with FCA Insurance, trusted expert in community association risk and protection. Okay, today's session is led by someone who lives and breathes the world of community association insurance. Kelly brings more than 25 years of hands-on experience, which I say about all of our presenters that you wouldn't know by looking at her. Beginning her insurance career in 1997 and earning her Florida 220 and 215 licenses in 2005. A Florida native and graduate of Cumberland University, Kelly has built an impressive track record across the insurance landscape, serving as an operations manager, commercial lines department manager, and vice president before joining Star with HIG in 2017, now known as FCA Insurance. Kelly is not only an insurance professional, she is an active educator and an advocate for the communities that she serves. She sits on the board of the Volusia Community Association Advisors, VCAA, helping to provide vital education to licensed CAMs, board members, and maintenance personnel. She has also participated in CAI's Congressional Advocacy Summit, lending her expertise to important conversations affecting Florida associations. With her deep operational background, decades of field experience, and commitment to elevating community association knowledge, Kelly brings a grounded, practical, and highly informed perspective to today's webinar Wednesday. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, thank you so much. Really, the only reason I really do this is so I can hear Diane say that each time I come on here. That's very nice. So I am here to talk to you all about the importance of certificates of insurance when and why you need them. And while it might not seem like an exciting topic to sit and listen to, it is a very important topic. So I'm glad to share all the knowledge that I have. Any client of ours, I always offer to help them with certificates of insurance for their vendors. So hopefully you have a trusted agent as well that you can go to and ask questions. Anything that you hear today, I would encourage you to talk to them about that for any of your current contracts. And the property managers that you have, the property managers working for an association, you already have to know so much information. To have to try to grasp everything insurance related is just unreasonable. So that's what we're here to help you with. So I'm going to get right into the subject matter after I give you a little insight into who we are. Florida Community Association Insurance is a niche agency. We focus on community associations because it is a very specific type of insured, and there's a lot of regulations that go into it. So that's what we do. We eat, sleep, and breathe condos and HOAs. We have been in the community for decades. We service all of Florida, and our objective is to educate board members as well as CAMs and also owners. So part of what we do as an agency is educate the residents of an HOA or condo association as to what their insurance needs are versus the associations. Certificate of insurance is going to look like this document here in the bottom corner of the page. It's a very overwhelming document with a lot of small type that you can't even understand what it is. It's just too much information in one document. It is a snapshot of insurance information for the customer. So this is not a contract. It is not valid for more than the time period that the dates listed here are. But also, if you get a certificate of insurance 6 months ago, it's not going to be relevant to today. So we'll talk about why that is a little bit further into the program. The purpose of a certificate of insurance is to verify that the person that you're talking to, the vendor, has insurance in place at that time, and that the limits are what you need for them to have to do a project on your property. The certificate includes information specific to those policies so that you can verify the endorsements that you have requested in your contract are actually part of that policy. Having a certificate of insurance is very important for condo associations and HOAs so that if a claim occurs and it's related to the work that was done by that vendor, then the burden of the defense falls to their insurance carrier and not to the association's carrier. If a claim happens because a contractor left out debris and somebody had an injury because that debris was in the walkway, and then there's a lawsuit, you don't want that lawsuit to be filed against your insurance, your association's insurance. You want the party who was at fault, the contractor, to provide the defense under their insurance. You also want to make sure that they're covering their workers that are on your property. Workers' compensation is required in the state of Florida. So you want to make sure that they have coverage for their employees that are on your property, again, so that responsibility doesn't fall onto the association. It also ensures that they are in compliance with the contract wording. So when you have a contract written up for work to be done on a building, you're going to have certain requirements in there for insurance limits, and you want to make sure that that certificate limit matches what is in your contract. I could go all day talking about examples of why this is important and how not having a certificate impacted an association. To give you a couple of quick examples, there was a local condo association that had hired a cleaning company, and the cleaning company had come in and cleaned the floors, and they did not have appropriate signage up. A guest came by and slipped on the floors and was injured pretty severely. And because the cleaning contract did not have the appropriate certificate requirements, insurance requirements, the association's insurance had to come in and pick up the defense and coverage for those damages. and it impacted their policy premium. They had to change carriers because they eventually got dropped by the insurance carrier that they were with. So they're having to pay higher premiums and a deductible involved to cover that case. And that case went on for several years. So it impacted their insurance for more than just that current year. It follows you for 3 to 5 years. Another incident is where a contractor is driving one of their large trucks and they hit one of the condo buildings, and they did not have the adequate automobile liability coverage for the commercial vehicles. So coverage was not provided to repair the building. That had to come out of the association's budget to repair the building instead of that vendor being able to provide coverage for it. One of the worst examples we've seen is a contractor was hired to do concrete restoration on a building, and somebody's unit, the door somehow got open, whether it was left open by the owner or it was left open by a contractor after checking the unit. The unit became covered in dust while the unit owner was gone for 4 days. And that dust is called silica, and it can be very toxic. So the lady came back and found her unit completely damaged after she had recently remodeled. Initially, the contractor agreed that they would take care of the repair costs, but as those costs started to climb, they no longer wanted to do so. We then found out that their insurance denied the claim filed to repair that unit because the work was done by a subcontractor, and the association had no idea that a subcontractor had even been hired. They didn't have a certificate of insurance in place for that subcontractor. So then it took several months of fighting to get the proof of insurance from that subcontractor. So it was a very rough situation. And if the appropriate documentation had been received as part of the contract, then we could have avoided a lot of those situations. The biggest piece of information when you think about certificates of insurance is, when do you get a certificate of insurance? For some reason, it became industry standard, not just in community associations, but anywhere, to collect certificates of insurance from contractors after the job was done, when payment was to go out. So the accounting department knew, we don't send payment out until they give us their certificate of insurance. Well, at that point, it's too late. If they don't have insurance, then if anything happened during the job, there's no coverage, and it's a moot point. So you want to request a certificate of insurance before the work begins. And I would suggest that you get that certificate of insurance before you sign a contract, so that you can verify those limits and endorsements are in place before signing that contract. This is going to apply to any special work that has to be done if there's repairs that have to be made after a hurricane, concrete restoration, if a building is being painted, if floors are being redone, if windows are being redone. If you have a contractor that comes in on an annual basis that you see all the time, every year they need to provide you a certificate of insurance for the current year, so that they don't come onto your property until you have proof that they have insurance. So again, recurring maintenance, special projects that have to be done, annual events. If you have an annual party where you have vendors come in, let's say you have a food service come in, you want to make sure that they have certificates of insurance and you have those before they come onto your property. When you look at a certificate of insurance, again, it's overwhelming. There's a lot of information. You can create a sample certificate. Again, as an agent, I provide sample certificates to our clients all the time with information highlighted that they need to look at. So you want to make sure that they've got your client's name listed as the certificate holder, that the policy terms that you're seeing on the certificate cover the dates of the work that's being done. So if the certificate expires a month into when the project is going to be going on and the project is 3 months beyond that, you want to make sure that you have the renewal certificate. You also want to make sure that the limits are adequate, that they are what you asked for in the contract. and they need to be equal to or greater than the liability limits that the association carries. So the associations typically carry $1 million in general liability with a 2 million policy aggregate. That needs to be the same for the contractor's general liability. If you carry $1 million, they don't need to carry 500,000, they need to carry $1 million or more. Also very important is for the certificate to have marked that the certificate holder, which again is going to be your association, is included as additional insured on the liability policies. And that additional insured status is what provides defense coverage extended to the association in the event of a claim. If the limits are missing, if the issue date, the date that the certificate was actually generated, is a past date, if the certificate holder box is blank or says proof of insurance, those are all red flags. You want to make sure that the certificate was issued after you requested it, because the certificate of insurance is only a snapshot of insurance in place on the date that it was issued. So you want to make sure it's a current date, and also you want to make sure that it's coming directly from the contractor's insurance agent. You don't want it to come from the contractor themselves. Unfortunately, documents can be manipulated, and it has happened in the past where a certificate was received from an agent, the insured got it, and they made their own changes and sent it on. So it needs to come directly from the insurance agent for the contractor. Sometimes you'll get asked for a deck page, and some people don't understand what's the difference between a deck page and a certificate of insurance. Deck is short for declaration. A declaration page is the primary page of an insurance policy that shows who the insured is, what type of policy it is, and the effective dates of that policy. So a deck page can be issued, let's say your policy was effective January 1st and a deck page was issued. But that doesn't mean that 2 months later that insurance is still in force. So a certificate of insurance can be requested months into the policy term and generated to prove that policy is still in force. This here is a bigger picture of your certificate of insurance. Again, that's a lot of information. If I was looking at this and I hadn't been raised in the insurance industry, it would be too overwhelming to even understand where to start. But your insured is going to be this box up here. Whoops. Let me see if I can get back to that screen. Your policy numbers are listed here for each policy. Your effective dates are next to the policy number. The type of insurance is over here on the left side. You'll see these letters next to each type of insurance. Those correspond up here where it tells you who the insurance companies are. So this says insure letter A. That means this company here is who provides that insurance policy. And then on the far right, you're going to have all of your policy limits for each policy. Down here is going to be some special wording, and that's where your endorsements are listed for the different policy types. We also actually ask that you have the contractor include in the description what type of work is being done for that project to avoid situations where a roofer comes out and does a roof and there's a problem and you need to file a claim, and then it's found out that, well, they're insured as a handyman and there's no coverage for roof work. So that's why we suggest that you have them put in there the type of work that's being done so that you know they're insured appropriately. Down here in the bottom left is going to be where it lists the name of the condo or HOA. And this should be signed by an insurance representative down here. The very important piece of information of the issue date is in this top right corner. So you want this date here to be a current date, again, after you've requested the certificate of insurance. Managing and tracking certificates of insurance is a very difficult task, especially when there's a lot of vendors. And why it's difficult is because each vendor is going to have their own separate effective date. So you could have, 20 vendors and all of them have renewal dates throughout the year. So you have to have a way to set reminders that if a certificate expires in March, you want to ask for that renewal certificate in February to make sure you have it on in time. And again, you want to make sure that you have the renewal certificate of insurance before that contractor sets foot onto the property. You don't want them to come onto the property after the certificate you have on file has expired, because you don't know whether or not it's renewed. They can tell you it's renewed, but you don't know it until you have that certificate of insurance. When you have additional insured status on a certificate, there is a big part to that, in that you require that status is provided in the written contract with the vendor. The policies for contractors will have a couple of different types of additional insured endorsements. One of them is where they list the association specifically in their policy as additional insured, which does not typically happen. Typically, there is a blanket additional insured status, which means there is a form in the contractor's policy that says anybody that requires additional insured status in a written contract is awarded that additional insured status. So again, if there's not a written contract and that written contract does not state specifically that the contractor agrees to provide additional insured status to the association, then it's no good. It doesn't provide any type of coverage. We've seen a lot of contracts for vendors where it's just a one-page contract. Some of them don't list any insurance at all. So you want to make sure that you're looking at all of the contracts. And if it does not specifically state the insurance requirements, it doesn't say that they agree to carry the type of insurance and specific limits and provide additional insured status, you want to ask for an addendum to that contract to make sure that it's there, because again, otherwise they could give you a certificate that says you're additional insured, but if it's not in a written contract, it's no good. Another reason to keep insurance certificates on file for multiple years is because you will possibly have to perform a workers' compensation audit. And that audit will look at the financial records for the association, and it'll look at who they paid money to. And any vendor that they paid money to, you need to provide the workers' comp certificate so that you don't get charged for the cost of that job on your workers' comp policy. Workers' comp policies are based on payroll and subcontractor costs. So if you don't have insurance for a subcontractor that you hire, your workers' comp or your association's workers' comp policy is going to pick up coverage for that, and they will charge for it at the audit. When you talk to contractors, if you go at them with any of this information that we talk about today, you will probably hear some of them say, I've never been asked for that before. And don't let that sway you, because just because they say they haven't been asked doesn't mean that you're not asking the right question. It just means that the right people aren't getting a chance to look at the contract or the certificates of insurance. So if you can have a form completed that tells vendors what you expect from them, what you expect in a contract, and what you expect in their certificate, then you can hand it out to each of your vendors. That way they're educated ahead of time and they know what your expectations are for that property. And again, they're not going to like that you're asking for all this information. And part of that is because sometimes there is an additional cost to some of these endorsements that we suggest having. In addition to the additional insured endorsement, there's other endorsements such as a waiver of subrogation, a primary and non-contributory endorsement, and a per project endorsement. And those all do come with a cost. So if they have to go back and ask their agent for them in order to be able to bid on a job, they're going to have to pay additional money. The per project endorsement is going to make sure that the limits of that policy are applied to your specific project, because if they're doing multiple projects and there's a claim on another one, those limits could be exhausted if you don't have that per project endorsement on there. And then primary and non-contributory is going to make sure that the association's policy is not contributing to a claim where it's the contractor's fault that there's a liability issue. And then the waiver of subrogation is going to make sure that their insurance carrier doesn't then come back after paying a claim and try to subrogate and recoup those costs from your association. So you want to make sure that the contractors are aware of what's going to be required. You want to also discuss it with the board to make sure that the board is aware, because sometimes it might take some time to work through getting these endorsements added to the policies. So you want to make sure that your board members know that you're doing what's best for the association so that they don't get frustrated with the timeline of the process. You can get sample contract wording in addition to the checklist we talk about for vendors and a sample certificate. You can also create a template so that they know what is expected in that contract. Insurance agents are not lawyers. You know, there's a very thin line between us, it seems like, but you want to make sure that you're talking to legal counsel about the contract wording. We can provide suggestions as an agent, but the final wording needs to come from your legal counsel. So I think we've gone through some of our case studies already, but I want to make sure that if anybody has a subject that they want to maybe raise their hand on, I'm glad to answer questions on it. I'm sure that people have had issues with this come up before. If you have not, then I'm glad to provide you a preemptive strike to avoid those situations, because unfortunately they can go on for a very long time. They can go on for years when an issue arises. So let me know if anybody's got something that they want to bring to the discussion.
We've got a couple questions here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We just had a ridiculous claim the attorney for our insurance company approved, but never let us know. Shouldn't there be some say by the board?
That is a great comment and a great question. And let me just do a disclaimer. I am not defending the insurance companies. I'm just explaining what happens. So that is very frustrating. We hear that all the time. We had a condo that was renewing very recently that they had a slip and fall, and they didn't know until we got their loss runs that it paid out $500,000. That is a huge claim, and that's going to impact them for 4 or 5 years. There absolutely should be some say with the board. Unfortunately, when it comes to a claim, the insurance carriers are going to look at what they think the cost is to try and settle versus what it would cost to go to a full trial. And typically it's going to cost a lot less to settle than to go through a long trial that, again, is going to be drug on for multiple years. So it's a lot of times you don't get a say. And if you're not calling your claims adjuster and following up and asking those questions, you're not going to know anything until it's done, unless you have an agent that is following up on your behalf to try to find out where we are in the matter. But even then, unfortunately, it's a lot of times out of the board's hands. You want to make sure, though, that you do provide documentation if you can. A big thing that's going on now is surveillance footage. I know that a lot of associations, HOAs, and condos are adding surveillance cameras to the property, which is wonderful. But unfortunately, there are some litigants that seem to do this for a living that know you're only keeping that footage for 2 weeks or 30 days. So they will wait until that time period passes before they file a lawsuit. And at that point, if you are not having your footage kept for multiple months or a year, the footage is gone and you don't have a way to prove that they're making up a story or that they had some contributory negligence in what happened. So we suggest, if you do have surveillance cameras, ask your vendor how much it would cost to keep your footage for a year, or also make sure that you've added cameras to spots. You don't want people to know if there is a blind spot on your property. And if you are aware of an incident that happened, you want to find that footage and save it for, a few years. Just in case something comes up, you've got the footage to show. I had another condo last year that had a guest come. That guest has stayed there multiple years in a row, and they were able to catch on camera the visitor going out to the pool area and staging a fall. I mean, it was clear as day on the camera, and luckily they had that camera footage so that they can have that in their defense because this person is, even though that they know that there's cameras, they're still trying to go after the association.
It's like the cams that try to weasel their way into getting the certificates from us when they didn't attend. Just kidding, just kidding. Okay, another question comment is I received a certificate. The insured is different from the vendor. However, towards the bottom of the certificate where it says description of operations, it says coverage provided for all leased employees but not subcontractors of and the business name. I don't see this as being acceptable. However, they state that it is. I have never had an issue before. Your expert opinion, please.
Sure. So that sounds like to me, without looking at it, it sounds like they are utilizing a payroll company. And when you have a payroll company, sometimes they will provide workers' comp coverage under their umbrella. So that could be what that is. And that's a very important question to bring up because when you have a payroll company, if you have not specifically added your employees to the policy, there's not coverage for them. A normal workers' comp policy, it provides coverage for any of your employees. But when you have payroll services, you're actually leasing employees. So if you've hired a new employee and you have not made that call yet to add them and they go out to a property and they get hurt, there's no coverage because they weren't added. So I would suggest if you get a certificate from a payroll company that you ask for it to list the specific employees that are going to be on your property so that you know that there is coverage for those specific employees.
Should an HOA carry workers' comp? I have two members battling about this.
Sure. That's a great question. So workers' comp policies are usually a volunteer type policy for associations. If you don't have direct employees, what that policy is going to cover is volunteers. If you have, for example, a Christmas decorating committee that goes out and hangs wreaths on your fences and somebody gets hurt while they're doing that, that workers' comp policy will pay for their medical bills. It's not going to pay lost wages like your typical workers' comp policy, but it will pay for medical bills. The other thing that it will provide some coverage for is if you have hired a vendor and you got proof of insurance like you're supposed to, and then a few months later they come out to the property, they're mowing lawns and they get hurt, and then you found out, well, they didn't pay their insurance renewal, so they didn't actually have coverage, and now they're coming after you. That workers' comp policy for the association will come in and pick up that claim. That was a great question. And usually those policies are about $500 for the year.
And the question was, what are the standards for the workman's comp? And so that's basically you've answered that. Someone asked for a link to this class. We'll have Kelly's information on the last slide, and you can contact her directly to get any PowerPoint, or we also videotape this and we send it out on the newsletters. Every newsletter that you guys get from Beyond the Boardroom has a link to all of our classes so that you can share it with other board members and also other CAMs. Yeah, one more question for you before you move on. In the certificate holder box, bottom left corner, should it be the association name or the homeowner's name and address where the work is being done?
That is a very good question as well. So it depends on who's hiring that contractor. If a homeowner is hiring the contractor, then they're going to want a certificate with their own name, but the association can also ask for one because if you want that additional insured status, it's going to have the association's name as the certificate holder.
Okay.
All right.
So any more questions before we do have another question. Can Kelly provide us a COI template if we email her?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Of course she'll do that. Kelly's the best. We highly recommend FCA Insurance. Okay, how do community associations cover work that members of the community are volunteering to do on common elements in the community? Another good question.
Okay, so if you're asking how to cover those volunteers if they get hurt, that's going to be that workers' comp policy. If you're asking because let's say that they are, let me think of an example that they might do. Let's say that they are recaulking windows on a bottom floor because no volunteers need to be up on ladders. Volunteers don't need to do anything that is of real risk very small jobs, nothing you should be hiring a contractor for. Because like you're suggesting in your question, if they don't do it right, then who are you going to go after? So if they do a job, let's say that they try to repair an arm on a gate that opens and closes when you go through the community with your car, and then that doesn't work right, and that arm comes down and hits a car, like who's at fault there? You don't have anybody to go back against. So you want to make sure that they're only doing work that isn't gonna have an impact like that.
I like it. Okay. Any more questions before Kelly moves on? Okay.
Okay, so I just want to do a quick recap because I know that's a whole lot of insurance information that nobody was really looking to put into their brain. So the most important pieces of information about a certificate of insurance: get the certificate before the job starts. Make sure that the issue date on the certificate is a current date after you've requested the certificate. Figure out a way as a CAM to track those insurance certificates so that you're getting them as they renew, and make sure, if it were me, I would keep a separate file for my workers' comp audit, because you have to have certificates of insurance that cover that specific workers' comp policy term. So I would keep a separate folder that only, has copies of certificates. You might have another copy someplace else, but keep them in a separate folder that when it comes time for workers' comp audit, you've got it all right there. You don't have to go digging. You don't have to start calling contractors because you can't find a certificate. You've got them all in one quick place that you can get to.
Okay, we have another question that came in.
Okay.
Do volunteers need to be approved by the board of directors like committee members?
That is a very good question. And yes, they absolutely do need to be approved. You don't have to necessarily do it for every single thing that they do, but you can do a blanket approval for, let's say we're gonna have a post-hurricane cleaning committee. And this committee is gonna have, these as members, and it's not for a specific job. It's just for this year, we're approving that. And then when the need arises, they go out and they're picking up small debris, nothing big, nothing of consequence, trash or whatever. You've got it in your meeting minutes. So yes, if something does happen, you've got it all documented appropriately.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Good
And
questions.
if anybody
Good
had this
questions.
class before, I say you can't take this class enough. I think every time you take it, you're going to remember something else differently. It's a lot of information. It's information that I've learned in my, decades long career working with contractors as well, to put everything together. And it's going to be troublesome when you talk to a contractor and you start asking them for, DNA samples and social security numbers. But I say you're there to protect the association. That's your concern, not if the contractor's irritated because they have to, make another phone call or whatever it might be.
Exactly. Samuel Hart put, thanks, Kelly. Excellent information. We agree. Okay, Lindsay, anything to add?
No, Kelly does an amazing job every time. So she's very good at covering all topics needed.
Let
And
me just
making insurance digestible, right?
Yes, yeah. I didn't
Yeah.
have any good jokes today. I apologize for that. I'll do better for next time. But keep in
Yeah,
mind, if you want somebody like me to work on your insurance, we're already working on our renewals for June and July. Start working on them 5 months ahead of time. Of course, we can work on them last minute too, but if you think it's too early to start working on it, you'd be surprised. So feel free to give us a call and see what we can do for you.
love it. Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, we'll let Kelly get back to it because she's all, like she said, already working on June. So it's busy over there in the insurance world. And we'll go over what you guys need to do for getting credit for today. Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you.